We are at our location where we're going to be exploring a little bit today. Let's talk a little bit about why do we even go out and do this kind of stuff? What are we looking for, and why is it interesting and important to us to do?
Right, so what we're doing is trying to go out and locate archaeological sites in the Chicagoland area. This is important because we're in an urban setting and the majority of these sites are disappearing due to urbanization, building of construction projects, road projects, things like that. These are finite things, and basically we want to document them while they still exist before they disappear. There's possibly even a chance that some of them might remain, but for the most part, things are disappearing quickly from the Chicagoland area.
Sure. And so there are kind of two types of sites. Ones that we know that they exist because you've got these archival maps, these old maps through history that indicate that something was here, and maybe archaeologists have already come out and investigated themselves. But then there's also the chance of discovery too, which is pretty exciting.
Oh yeah, no, there's always that chance of finding something that hasn't been mapped.
And why is it that we're going to keep the location quiet? We're not going to announce where we are right now.
Well, the thing is that looting is a big thing, believe it or not. And so what we're going to do is keep the site's location a secret, because we do not want people coming and looting the site, removing these archaeological resources.
And on that note, let's say we find a really cool arrowhead.
We have to leave it. We don't have the permits to collect these things.
And it's amazing.
They have to be left in situ at the archaeological site.
Yeah, it's been exciting and also bizarre over the last couple of years, learning more and more about this, then finding really neat stuff and then just putting it right back on the ground and walking away.
That's what you do.
It's wild.
You have to keep these things at the site where they belong.
All right, so let's go a little bit before, whether it's ghost hunting or archaeological exploring. It always starts first with research. So let's take a look at why we chose this location today.
It is, or was, a massive prehistoric village site. It is a multi-component site, and that means there are different periods of prehistoric people living at this particular site. We've got the Archaic period, the Woodland period, the Woodland period and the Mississippian period, people that all laid claim to this particular site. But it was the last group of people, the Mississippians, who sculpted the landscape into a formation of mounds and ditches and cache pits, things like that, to store food. Coming here in the beginning, I had to do my homework, and that meant maps, documents, oral evidence, interviewing people to find out what was here. But I do have some of the documents here today that I used. We have from this map an indication of a very large earthwork. We have little symbols that indicate that there were burials here, and in fact when they put one of the streets through the village, the road runs right through it, so people today who are driving along that street are literally driving through a prehistoric village, but they don't know it. But when they put the one road through the area, they broke into, or construction broke open one of the mounds, and human remains, skeleton, were exposed. So we have the document here that shows where some of these mounds were within the location.
And what's the age of this map that you're looking at right here?
The age of this map is circa 1900. On this particular manuscript, we see the village outlined here. So we've got this detailed map that shows where the burial mounds were located, as well as many of the cache pits. When drawn to scale, the village site encompasses this entire location. You can see how the street bisects the village site, and you can see where the mound, it lines up to the road's edge. When the road was constructed, this was the mound.
And where were you right this moment?
We are right over here in this parking lot.
Okay.
Over the time that I've been coming through this location, I have found countless artifacts, many lithics, which are stone tools, and honestly I can't even tell you how many pottery sherds I found. So within this village site as well. That all said, there's also a historical component. We have the farm period as well. You have to remember that these lands, though it's a parking lot and streets and you've got the airplanes flying above and whatnot, these were all farms at one point. And so back in this location, you can also find materials from the farms, broken dishes, enamelware, farm tools, things like that.
So yeah, let's say we go out there and we have a successful day, we find some unique items. You will then mark them down on GPS just to have a record of them.
Correct.
And what other kind of notes and recordings do you do as an archaeologist?
So I've got my field notebook here, and I'll make notes of what we found. If we find skeletons, yeah, we definitely I will make a phone call then and there. It'll first be, well, technically it should be to the police first. So I'll do that first, because until you come out and analyze the scene, you don't know if it's more recent or if it's something from the past. In this case, the prehistoric past, or even the historic native past of the area. But it could be a crime scene from 30 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So first thing we do is call the police. Well, being who I am, the second thing I would do is then call the state archaeologist to let them know.
So we are just 100 yards maybe from the car, from where we just recorded the little intro. There are flakes on the ground immediately that Dan is finding.
So what you're looking at is the result of the process of lithic reduction. So when people are creating these tools, whether it's a knife, a spear, or an arrow point, the process begins with a material called chert. And so what they do is they reduce the chert rock using antler and hammer stones to create smaller flakes, and they work from that, removing pieces from it and creating stone tools out of it.
How can you tell a flake, a worked piece of stone versus just a small stone?
You will see that there are flaking scars, and over here there are some scars along here. It's probably going to be kind of hard to see on the camera.
That's just pretty good.
But they look like little grooves in the stone. And
kind of
then,
like saw-toothed,
right,
a little bit. Okay.
Right, like serrated almost.
Yeah.
And then you'll also look for platforms where the piece was hit. So on this one, there's a platform here. That's where it was struck with the hammer stone. All right, so here we are at the site that I was talking about. This is a reason why we try to preserve archaeological sites within the Chicagoland area. We have a road right next to us. When I came here years ago, you couldn't even walk through here. They came through with this heavy machinery and removed the buckthorn. Again, a very good thing. But in that process, or during that process, they rolled through the site. And I can tell you right now that there is sensitive material scattered through this location. There are, again, lithics, stone tools. We have this exposed pit, in which I have found many stone tools, and we believe to be a possible cache pit. This site used to be covered. It's no longer covered. It's exposed, and material has been lost, unfortunately. Walking along this trail, this looks like it could be a stone tool, but most likely it's just a chert rock. And it's chert rock.
Too thick. That's the other thing to point out, that we're not out here with trowels or shovels or anything. This is all just on the surface.
So, come closer. We have chert fragments, and I spy a possible stone tool. You can see these little fragments here, 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 and then these are chert flakes.
Yeah.
Okay, in fact, you can see the bulb of percussion right here where the person struck at this, creating this flake, of course removing it from the core of chert, to make their tool. Now over here, we actually have a knife. This is a stone knife. They haven't finished it yet, but the surface, you can see that it's still bulky. But had they finished it, it would have been a beautiful knife. So this is a
Wow.
a knife in the process.
In the works, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the works.
What age-ish are you thinking?
I mean, looking at this out of context, quite honestly, it's hard to, because many of the tools were generic looking.
Sure.
In many cases. So this could come from any period, really.
But like, what's the range, I guess, just to give people some idea?
In this case, I would say within the last 5,000 years. Sometimes, if you had a really good chert flake, not this one because of the curve,
sure,
you could make a very small arrow or scraper or tool out of it. But that being said, even flakes were used as tools. So think of the little, like, razor knife, you know.
Sure.
It's used to do some work and then thrown away afterward. This is basically an unfinished biface blank. And by biface, I mean it has two faces, here and here. And it would have had, the edges would have been worked on both sides. And they're, depending on what this person was making, if they were making, for example, a spear, they probably would have added little notches to the sides. But because this is unfinished, I don't know what they have or had in mind when they were making this tool. Maybe a knife, because it's a nice long piece, or it could have been a spear point. Unfortunately, we'll never know. This side at least gives you an idea of, again, more or less what the finished product would have looked like. They would have kept working it, so there had been flaking scars all throughout the face of the tool. So it took 3 steps away from the original tool, and here's another one.
Oh, wow.
So this is another tool in the process of being created. And yeah, same explanation as before, different tool. So again, we're putting it back, but most likely I'm going to bring the state here, so I'm just going to move it up here just an inch or two, a couple of inches from where we found it. Cover that up.
And that's what we do, looking for artifacts and remnants of history that might be a couple decades old to thousands of years old. Sometimes we can debunk a legend, sometimes we can verify someone's stories or historical claims. For me personally, I love getting a better picture of the history of a site I've covered in my book or a place I've investigated. Getting a better picture of the history of a site only helps you. Thanks for watching, subscribe to this channel, and follow me at whatsyourghoststory.com to keep up with my paranormal adventures across the country.